several years back, MMA expert.
He's not an expert, he's a fan with an audience.
Joseph Rogan made a plea to some of his listeners saying, can somebody please find out how eye pokes affect the outcome of a match?
John Ollie just poked the shit out of his eyes. Damn it. And it looks like my God. You know, I would like to see statistics on how, when guys fight, what happens after they get eye poked. Like how often they win. Somebody do that. One of you MMA websites.
I found a Reddit thread. It was called, there should be a list of how many UFC fights contain eye pokes and how many of them, the one doing the eye pokes, gets the win at the end. There's talks of this article, but this article has been taken down. I went into the Wayback Machine and I actually found the article. It was written by an author, Stephen Rivers, MMALatestNews.com. So I'm going to read that for you. If anybody has contact with Stephen Rivers, forward him to me. I tried to contact him to ask more about this, but he's not on Instagram. Contacting him through X is behind a paywall, and I looked into my YouTube earnings to see if that was in my budget. It was not. So here we go. Eye pokes. In MMA, Poke to Win by Stephen Rivers, May 31st, 2016. Here are the findings in short. There is a sample size of 100 fights that I saw eye pokes since UFC 110. So let me see, May 31st, 2016, hold on. We could safely say it's between UFC 110 and UFC 198. It might have been one before that. It could have been, the last one may have also been Fight Night 87, Overeem versus Arlovsky. Sample size, 100 fights that saw eye pokes since UFC 110. Bullet points, 53% ended with the fighter guilty of committing an eye poke go on to win the fight. The eye poker wins the fight 53% of the time. 35% saw the fighter overcoming an eye poke to win. 12% ended in draws or situations where both fighters had their eyes poked. On a recent episode of Joe Rogan's Fight Companion podcast, the UFC announcer urged the MMA media to provide an analysis of who goes on to win fights after an eye poke occurs. With everything Rogan has given all of us over the years, it seems like the least we can do. What a nice guy, Stephen Rivers. Starting back at UFC 110 and working our way forward, we have identified 100 fights inside the octagon that saw one or sometimes both fighters subjected to a finger in the eye. So, is there a correlation between eye pokes and victories in the octagon? We discovered that 53% of the fights considered saw the fighter guilty of committing an eye poke go on to win the fight. That is compared to only 35% overcoming an eye poke to win, with the remainder of the fights either ending in draws or situations where both fighters had their eyes poked. So that's pretty significant that the guy getting their eye poked only goes on to win 35% of the time. This is crazy right here. Interestingly, when you isolate the fights where the eye poke took place in the first round, the poker went on to win 74% of the fights. Included in that list, the Joanna Jędrzejczyk versus Claudia Gadelha bout at UFC Fight Night Dos Santos versus Miocic, where Jędrzejczyk caught Gadelha in the eye twice in rounds 1 and 2 before winning by decision. Then there were the nights where eyes were particularly vulnerable, like UFC Fight Night Gustafsson versus Manoa in 2014. We saw Claudio Henrique da Silva hurt Brad Scott's eyes in rounds 1 and 3 en route to a decision victory. Neil Seery poked Brad Pickett's eyes twice but still lost, and in the main event, Jimmy Manoa took a finger to the eye in the second round before being finished later in the round. Worse was UFC 159 in Jersey in 2013, the card headlined by Jon Jones' title defense against Chael Sonnen. Not only were Brian Caraway, Ovince St. Preux, Gian Villante, Phil Davis, Alan Belcher, and Michael Bisping all unfortunately sticking their fingers in their opponent's eyes, but the fights between St. Preux and Villante and Belcher and Bisping were stopped as a direct result of eye pokes. 5 times out of his 9 fights through the period, Michael Bisping's fights involved eye pokes. Against Wanderlei Silva and Alan Belcher, Bisping was the culprit. Against Yoshihiro Akiyama, Jason Miller, and Vitor Belfort, Bisping was the wrong party. In the aforementioned Alan Belcher fight, Bisping was also caught with a finger in the eye earlier in the fight himself. And what of Jon Jones, also facing the wrath of the online MMA community for eye poking? 3 times he featured on the list, with eye pokes against Alexander Gustafsson, Glover Teixeira, and Daniel Cormier, a small feature of his 3 victories. It should, however, be pointed out that through the period, Jones had 9 straight wins without a single eye poke before the Gustafsson fight. The results aren't particularly inclusive overall, but the stat where 74% of the first round pokers go on to win the fight shows that the longer the fight goes on, the more an eye poke could really hinder a fighter. I think the desire for fighters to just carry on and tough it out may be to their detriment here, and I would urge the independent cage side doctors to intervene more here. How exactly they test someone's vision in the heat of the moment, I don't know. But fighters, please be wary. An early eye poke doesn't look good for your chances in the rest of the fight. So this speaks to the Tom Aspinall Ciryl Gane incident, where Ciryl Gane caught some flack for poking Aspinall's eyes, but Aspinall seemed to be catching most of the flack from this for people stating that since there was no catastrophic eye injury that he could have gone on. I don't think this is a good take, because you got a guy like Ciryl in front of you. Do you really want to go in there with one eye? Actually, he got poked in both eyes, so going in there with compromised vision doesn't seem like a good decision. And then when you look at the statistics that people getting poked in the first round go on to lose 74% of the time, not a good thing to go about. Part of the problem, I think, also is that after these eye pokes, we're asking the fighters whether they want to continue or not. And this is tough, because I think most fighters are just going to try to tough it out, even if they are obviously compromised. I think this is part of the mental makeup of these fighters anyways. This brings to mind not only the eye pokes, but a few weeks ago where we had Kevin Holland take a shot to the nuts, and it was so bad that he just couldn't seem to get past it. But when the referee kept asking if he wants to go on, he pleaded the 5th. He would neither say yes or no to whether he could go on. And I think that probably cost him the match. We could probably even make a statistic like this of nut shots and how many of the people that are getting kicked in the balls go on to lose the match as well. I think any foul is going to cause a heavy compromise against the fighter. Back to Aljamain Sterling, who took a knee to the head when he was a downed opponent. He said he couldn't go on in the match. The foul was too bad. He was too injured. He took a lot of flack for not continuing on. You've got guys like Anthony Smith. His idea is to tough it out, and he's come out publicly and say that fighters should tough it out.
That you have to be used to or willing to fight with one eye. I did it in Singapore. Everyone talks about it all the time, where the ladies waving stuff in front of my eyes. I can't see it. So what do? I just walk away and say, let's fight. It's like you either want to or you don't.
But Anthony Smith also, he lost after a bad foul. And against Jones, he got fouled and he did not go on to win that match. So if this is a professional venture that these fighters are on, and this is the way that you're making your money, this is not just a tough man competition like it was back in the day, where a lot of these guys, they were part-time construction workers, part-time fighters. They had other means of making money. These guys are training full-time. This is their life. This is them trying to get as much money out of the game as possible before retiring at a fairly young age. And a person like Tom Aspinall, who's been sat on the shelf for so long, and then he gets this match where the match is going well. I mean, it's not going super well. Again, I think probably won that round before the eye poke. But he's been sitting on the shelf. He's been waiting for this opportunity to fight or defend the belt or fight for a belt for a long time. The idea that he would just tough it out, go against one of the best strikers in the league and just do it with one eye, with compromised depth perception, maybe like not even one eye, maybe half an eye, and that he would just go on and possibly lose his belt. Statistically, a good chance of him losing his belt, good chance of him not going on and winning that match. And then he doesn't have the belt. Now he's getting paid less for each match after that, and he doesn't have necessarily a very long career in this sport. Well, the article said that they think that the ring doctors should find a way to intervene more often. It's hard to say, because if you ask somebody whether they could see or not, they're most likely going to say yes.
You can see my face? Yes. Yeah, right, man.
I'm not sure how this is going to be solved. Supposedly the UFC is implementing new eye poke rules. I don't know if that's going to be fines or an automatic point taken away. I think all of these are difficult to implement because the referee doesn't necessarily have the best view of what's happening. What Herb Dean said the other day is that the referee may not be always standing at the perfect angle to see how the finger is going into the eye. Oftentimes when somebody does get poked in the eye, they are okay, kind of, after, and they're willing to go on. So in that case, should you be taking the point away? Back to this article, when he mentioned that this is just correlation, it's very hard to say whether it's the eye poke that's actually causing the poker to win, or whether good fighters are more likely to poke people more. Eye poking could be just a part of a winning strategy. So a fighter that is a win at all costs type of person may be more likely to poke somebody in the eye.
I do poke people in the eyes, and it's very illegal, but I do it. It's like if someone's coming at me, I'll just put my hand on their forehead, and a lot of times they end up missing the punch that was intended for my face, and sometimes it lands in people's eyes. And people hate that. They're like, Jon, you're a very talented fighter. You don't need to use an illegal tactic to be successful. I try to tell people it's not intentional, but now I'm kind of known for it, and it's working.
Getting poked in the eye may cause a fighter to lose some confidence. We don't know exactly why there's such a glaring statistical imbalance between the people that get poked and the people that are doing the poking. Poking seems to really be part of a winning strategy though. So I guess I'm recommending that if you want to win, you gotta poke some eyes out.